a German traveller named Paul Hensner kneels before Queen Elizabeth I and gets the shock of his life. When she smiles, her teeth are pitch black. The most powerful woman in Europe has a mouth full of rot, and the culprit is not poison, not plague, but her own dinner plate. One item on this list was so expensive that only a queen could afford to slowly poison herself with it. Another was eaten purely to flaunt her status, each mouthful costing her another tooth. These 20 foods turned Elizabeth into a legend, but they also destroyed her smile forever. Hit that subscribe button and stay with us as we reveal the 20 horrifying dishes that feasted on England's Virgin Queen, one blackened tooth at a time. Number 20. Comfits, the crack of doom. Before breath mints were a thing, Tudor nobles crunched on comfits. These were tiny seeds, caraway, anise or coriander, spun in hot copper pans for days until they wore a thick, glassy coat of sugar. Elizabeth devoured them like popcorn, cracking them between her molars during meetings, plays, and even prayers. Physicians swore they sweetened her breath and settled her stomach. But every single crack was a microscopic earthquake on her enamel, a substance that never grows back, shattering under the weight of royal sugar. Number 19. Marchpane, the gilded brick. Forget the soft marzipan on your birthday cake. Tudor marchpane was a dense, dry paste made from ground almonds, rosewater, and pounds of pulverized sugar. Cooks sculpted it into life-sized castles, shields, and even portraits of the Queen herself, then painted it with real gold leaf. It dried harder than plaster. A single centerpiece contained enough sugar to feed a peasant village for a month. Elizabeth bit into these sculptures, swallowing the gold and the gilded poison alike. The almonds were innocent. The sugar around them was a silent executioner aimed straight at her gums. Number 18. Gingerbread, the sticky trap. Tudor gingerbread was a chewy, peppery brick of breadcrumbs, honey and ginger, pressed into carved wooden molds. The court's favorite trick? Shaping them into the faces of visiting ambassadors so the Queen could watch them eat their own likeness. The texture was notorious for clinging to every tooth crevice like wet cement. With no toothbrushes in sight, just rough cloth and soot to scrub with, this sugary mortar sat on her teeth for hours, eating away at her roots in the dark. Number 17. Candied violets, the floral razor. Flowers weren't just for smelling, they were dessert. Violets, rose petals, and borage blossoms were painted with egg white, dusted in fine sugar, and dried until they turned into brittle, glittering jewels. The Queen ate them by the fistful at banquets. The ladies of the court believed they preserved beauty and freshened the breath. In reality, they did the opposite. Each crystallized petal shattered against her teeth, leaving a fine, abrasive sugar paste that ground down her smile with every chew. Number 16. Suckets, the dripping menace. These were fruit peels, citrus or sea holly, boiled repeatedly in ever heavier syrups until they became translucent, dripping slabs of sugar. They were so messy that a special fork was invented for them. A spear on one end to stab the candy, and a spoon on the other to catch the sticky runoff. Elizabeth consumed these at every great feast. The fruit was an afterthought, the syrup was the substance, and as that viscous sugar ran down her throat, it left a corrosive film that no amount of royal rinsing could wash away. Number 15. Roasted larks, the crunch of dominion. Here is where our modern stomachs turn. Songbirds were a delicacy. Hunters netted dozens of larks at dawn, plucked them, and threaded them whole onto spits, bones, organs, and all. They were roasted until the tiny skeletons became brittle. You ate the entire bird in 2 bites, tasting the innards and the feathers. It wasn't the taste that mattered, it was the message. The Queen commanded the very birds of the air. This dish reveals just how alien her table was to ours. Number 14. Peacock, the dry spectacle. No roasted chicken would do for a Tudor feast. The peacock was carefully skinned, with its feathers intact, roasted, and then reassembled so it appeared to strut across the table alive. Its beak was gilded, and a wick was placed in its mouth to breathe fire. Elizabeth's guests gasped in awe, then carved into the notoriously tough, gamey and flavourless meat. No one ate peacock for the flavour. They ate it to say, "I am richer and more powerful than you." Number 13. Swan, the ultimate flex. Roasted swan was reserved almost entirely for royalty because the birds belonged to the crown. To serve swan was to declare that you operated beyond the law. Like the peacock, it was reassembled in its plumage, its neck wired upright, looking as graceful as it was greasy and tough. An ordinary Englishman could be hanged for killing one. The queen could devour a flock for a single afternoon's amusement. The point was never the eating. The point was absolute dominance. Number 12. Lamprey, the bloody parasite. Now we reach the truly sickening. The lamprey is an eel-like creature with a circular mouth full of rasping teeth, famous for latching onto fish and draining their blood. Tudor cooks killed it by drowning it in its own blood, then used that very blood to make a thick, rich sauce for the meat. A blood-sucking parasite served in a sauce made from its own lifeblood. Elizabeth ate this regularly. It wasn't damaging to her teeth, but it tells us her stomach was as iron as her rule. Number 11. Hippocras, the sweetened sabotage. This was a warm, spiced wine, red or white, steeped in cinnamon, ginger and cloves, then sweetened with sugar and strained until clear. Served after meals to aid digestion, Elizabeth drank this daily. This was the perfect storm. Wine's acidity softened her enamel, and the sugar fed the bacteria already feasting on her gums. The spices were supposed to make it healthy. In reality, it was a river of acid and sugar, washing over her decaying teeth. Number 10. Mumsy and Sweet Sack, the liquid status. The portraits don't show this. Elizabeth didn't just eat sugar, she drank it in the form of syrupy, high-alcohol sweet wines imported at crippling costs. The richer you were, the sweeter your wine. Sugar was a badge of status. So here is the cruel irony. The most powerful woman on earth was obligated, by her own status, to consume more sugar than anyone alive. Her rotting mouth was not a personal weakness. It was the visible, unavoidable proof of her immense wealth. Number 9. Manus Christi, the hand of Christ. Here, royal medicine and royal poison became the same thing. Manus Christi was a lozenge made of sugar, rosewater, ground pearls, and real flakes of gold. It was prescribed for fatigue, melancholy, and heart palpitations. The more tired the queen felt, the more gold and pearl sugar her doctors fed her, calling it a cure. The medicine meant to sustain her reign was in fact the very thing robbing her of her health. Number 8. Candied ginger, the hollow remedy. Ginger was highly respected in the Tudor pantry, believed to ward off the plague. So they took this medicinal root and drowned it in sugar. Boiled, simmered, and dried into sticky, translucent, sweet pieces, Elizabeth chewed it as a remedy for colds and stomachaches. The irony is devastating. The ingredient meant to protect her became worthless the moment it was preserved in the very substance that was destroying her. Number 7. Quince marmalade, the solid lie. In Tudor times, marmalade wasn't a spread. It was a dense, firm paste that you sliced with a knife. Quinces are notoriously sour, so to make them edible, they required an equal weight of sugar. The resulting slices were cut into jewel-like squares and dusted with more sugar. The queen ate this, believing she was consuming healthy fruit. In reality, she was biting into solid, concentrated candy. Number 6. Sugared almonds, the armoured nut. Whole almonds were spun in pans until they wore a thick, glossy, armour-like shell of coloured sugar. Piled into glittering pyramids on the table, Elizabeth cracked these constantly. The almond was nutrition. The sugary shell was the same slow poison as everything else. And given the choice, the queen always chose the shell. Number 5. Wafers, the prescription thin, crisp biscuits pressed between hot irons, flavoured with sugar and rosewater, and served with sweet wine at the end of the meal. They seem trivial, but they reveal the deepest tragedy. Tudor medical science genuinely believed that sweets at the end of a meal sealed the stomach and prevented illness. Elizabeth wasn't indulging against advice, she was obeying her doctors. They handed her the very weapon dissolving her teeth and called it healthcare. Number 4. Sugar subtleties, the edible insult. Chefs built entire scenes, ships, palaces, gardens and busts of Elizabeth out of hardened sugar paste. These centerpieces were carried out to applause, smashed and devoured. One piece could cost a fortune in imported sugar. The message to foreign ambassadors was clear. England is so obscenely rich, we sculpt art out of pure sugar and eat it for show. The teeth that crunched through those sugar towers paid the physical price for that political performance. Number 3. Sugar plate, the pure deception. Pure sugar, mixed with gum and rosewater, was molded and painted to look like other foods. Fake bacon, fake eggs, fake fruit, fake playing cards, all made 100% of solid sugar. Guests would reach for what looked like a snack and bite into pure candy. The Queen delighted in these illusions. It was the ultimate flex. Sugar had become so abundant that the wealthy used it to imitate reality itself. Number 2. Preserved and stewed fruits, the fearful choice. Fresh fruit was considered dangerous and disease-ridden in Tudor England. To make it safe, they boiled it down with heavy sugar. Damsons, cherries, pears, all turned into thick, syrupy conserves. Elizabeth ate these year-round, believing she was protecting her health from the dangers of raw apples and plums. She traded a mild imaginary risk for a guaranteed one. Even her caution pushed more sugar into her mouth. Number 1. Pure refined sugar, the ultimate culprit. At the very top is the substance that made every other item lethal. In Elizabeth's England, refined white sugar was the most expensive luxury on earth. A spice, a medicine, and a status symbol. It went into the wine, the sauces, the meat, and the medicine. Elizabeth reportedly loved it so much, she ate it nearly in its raw form, carrying lumps of it to nibble just to display her wealth. This is the culprit. Not age, not an enemy's spell. Just sugar in the mouth of a woman rich enough to have as much as she wanted, for as long as she lived. Paul Hensner saw the result in 1598. The most powerful smile in the world, eaten away by the one thing money could buy without limit. Here is my challenge to you. Next time you stir sugar into your coffee, look at those crystals and think of her. The confetti, the marchpane, the candied ginger, the lamprey. Look at the sweets in your own kitchen this week and ask yourself, what would they have cost her? Tell me in the comments, which of these 20 foods would you actually be brave enough to try? Does the lamprey scare you more than the peacock? Or would you dare to eat a sugar sculpture of your own face? Because Elizabeth I ruled the most feared court in Europe, and she paid for every ounce of that power. One blackened, rotten, unforgettable tooth at a time. Subscribe for more, and I'll see you in the next one.